In this video, we're going to take a look at 5 jazz standards that every beginner jazz pianist should know. Hey, it's Tobey here from Jazzmentl.com. Thanks for joining me for another one of my tutorials. It's important to learn these 5 standards because they will be called on the bandstand sooner or later. They're kind of standard in the industry in terms of favorite tunes to play. It's also good to learn these because they're fairly simple in comparison to other jazz standards. The form is not that complicated, the chord progression's not so complicated, and therefore I've chosen these 5 as kind of the basis of your beginner jazz repertoire. We're going to go through the feel and the tempo of each tune. We're going to talk about the form. We're going to look at the chord progressions, what keys to play it in, and any other interesting facts that we know about these songs. At the end of the video, I'm going to post a link to download the sheet music for each of these 5 songs. I'm going to put that link up in the corner so you can stick around for that. And also by the end of this video, you'll have a pretty clear idea of how to approach playing each of these standards. Let's dive in and get started with jazz standard number 1 that every jazz pianist, beginner pianist, should know, and that is Autumn Leaves. Now, of course, it is known by a lot of people. If you play this, people are going to absolutely recognize it. Let's talk about the feel and the tempo first. A lot of people play this tune like a medium swing tune, and I think it's good to play that with a band. In the case where I'm going to perform it in just a minute, I recorded it a little bit earlier, I'm going to play it as a ballad because I don't like to lose the original feel of the tune. So you can play it as a ballad, medium swing, up-tempo swing. Some people even play it as a bossa nova. In terms of the form of the tune, let's take a look at that. This is the sheet music that you're going to be able to eventually download. So the structure of the tune is A, and then it repeats and does B. The reason why it's B instead of another A is because this part is different than the previous 4 bars. So that's important, right? So it's A, B, and then when you get into the next section, scrolling down a little bit, it finishes off the tune with an entire C section that's by itself. C section would start here on the E minor chord and then go right through to the end. So it's kind of like an A, B, C tune. In terms of the chord changes, I would suggest to you that it's fairly simple to understand because it's all cycle of fifths. So for example, if we look at the destination chord for the first phrase, you've got E minor. So that is 6 in the key of G. So if you keep counting back and go up in fifths, which is cycle of fifths, you get this. It's a 2, 5, 1, 4, 7, 3, 6. So 3 is 5 of 6, 7 is 5 of 3, 4 is 5 of 7. You get the idea. That's where the whole cycle of fifths thing comes from. So that's why it's a simple tune, because all you have to do is remember 5 of 5 of 5 of 5. Okay. Now, I'm going to play it for you. The key to play this tune in is either the key of G or the key of F. I think a lot of people play it in F so that it would start on G minor. So if you just do those 2 keys, you're probably covered. Now, if a singer enters the picture, it might be in another key, but those are like the 2 standard keys that you can play it in. All right, like I said, I recorded it a little bit earlier. Let's play that version now. I think it's it's interesting to take a look at that chord progression near the end where it's going from the E minor here. So this is 6 and it's doing like a 2-5. So E minor to A7, but it's using the tritone substitution E flat 7, and then it's doing 2-5-1 of C major, and again, instead of G7, it's using the tritone substitution D flat 7. The reason why that sounds good is because the bass part moves down in half steps. So that's a nice progression that the ear likes to hear. So the cycle of fifths sounds like this if you just use chord tones. You hear that? That's cycle of fifths, diatonic cycle of fifths, because there's no bass notes in that progression or roots that are outside of the key of the moment, which is the key of G. All right, let's move on to the second jazz standard that every beginner jazz pianist should know, and that is Take the A Train. This one was written by Billy Strayhorn for the Duke Ellington Orchestra, a very prolific composer, Mr. Billy Strayhorn. In terms of feel, people typically play this as a medium swing tune. Now, some can play it really up-tempo. It's not generally done as a ballad or other strange rhythms. Some people might play it funk, but medium swing is kind of like the standard when you approach this tune. In terms of the form, you've got an A section, and then another A section, and then when you get to the bridge, it's a B section, which is starting in the key of F. So this is the B section, and then it just repeats to another A. So the tune is A, B, A, which is really good for beginner jazz pianists because you only have to really remember an A and a B section. The rest is just a bunch of repeats. In terms of the chord changes, pretty simple. I think it's important to point out this note right here, which is the sharp 11 of a D7 chord. That's the note that really stands out and gives it its flavor. The reason why that sounds neat is because it wants to resolve. Kind of like a blue note. Okay? Other than that, it's just a bunch of 2-5s. You can see that you've got, this is 2 minor 7 to 5-7, and this is a 2-5 of 2. Get the idea. So really just a bunch of 2-5s, and that's pretty much it. People play this in the key of C. I've never really seen it called in any other key because the melody in terms of eighth notes is a little difficult to learn. So a lot of people don't stray too far from the original key signature. I recorded this one as well a little bit earlier. Let's hear what Take the A Train sounds like. Like I pointed out, the chord changes are fairly simple. You've got 2 bars of C, then 2 bars of D7. That's a lot of room to stretch in terms of soloing. Let's move on to the third tune that every beginner jazz pianist should know, and that is the tune Just Friends. Now, the most interesting thing about Just Friends is the fact that it starts on the 4th note of the scale. So it is in the key of G, but it starts in C. So it kind of tricks the ear into thinking for a moment, hey, are we in the key of C? No, because it immediately does a 2-5 and gets to G major by bar 5. So that's interesting. The other thing is in terms of form, you've got an A section and then a B section. Got another A section here, and at the end, you've got a C section because it's a little bit different than the B. The last 4 bars are different. So the structure of the tune is A, B, A, C. In terms of keys to play this tune in, I would say that most people play it in the key of G, so stick to that. It's not really necessary right now to learn it in other keys unless you want to challenge yourself, because it typically won't be called on the bandstand in any other key. In terms of the chord changes, it's a lot like Take the A Train, very simple chord changes, just a bunch of 2/5s. Let's take a listen to this one and see what Just Friends sounds like on the piano. I really like that tune. It's such a nice melody. I think it's interesting to mention that instead of a standard 2/5 where you would have like A minor 7 to D7 leading to the G here, you've got a 2/5 of B flat. So this is 2 and 5 of B flat, and then over here you've got a 2/5 of A flat, but yet it goes to A minor. So that's interesting. You've got 2/5s that don't necessarily lead to the one chord, they lead somewhere else. So let's move on to the fourth standard that every jazz piano player should know. And this one is one you might recognize as well. This one's called Blue Bossa. Very much a favorite of people on the bandstand because it is one of those tunes that is not done in a straight ahead swing feel. It's done like a bossa nova. So that it, in terms of like changing up the feel, it's kind of an outlier. So people like to play it. It's also fairly simple to do. The chord changes are really simple. It pretty much sticks to C minor. You can see it goes from 1 to 4 in the key of C minor, and then a 2/5 of C minor, then a 2/5 of D flat. So not a lot of things to remember about this tune. It is a nice, pleasing melody. I think the interesting thing about the melody is you can probably try to do sixths, like instead of just the melody note, put in some other intervals as well. You could also do thirds if you wanted. Okay, so it's nice to do other things than just play the melody note. I do have a video that I've made on this channel that talks about the 6 diminished scale by Barry Harris, and we apply that to the melody notes. Kind of sounds like this. It's an arranging technique, so I highly recommend that you check out that video at some point. In terms of the keys to play Blue Bossa in, everybody plays it in E flat or C minor, which is the first chord of the tune. Let's take a listen now to me playing Blue Bossa. Such a nice tune, good melody, nice chord changes, pretty simple to solo over, so it does make the list of jazz standards that beginners should know. Just before we move to the last one, which I think you're going to recognize as well, I'd just like to point out that if you like videos like this one and tutorials like this one, just reach down, hit the thumbs up button. It really helps the channel when you do that. And if you'd like to subscribe, you can also hit the bell and you'll be notified of all the upcoming videos that we're making. Thanks for doing that. We're at the last jazz standard that every beginner jazz pianist should know. This one is called Summertime. Now, there's a lot of interesting things about Summertime. It's super simple in terms of its chord structure, but we'll get there in a second. The first thing that I'd like to point out is that in terms of feel, a lot of people play this in many, many different styles. Funk, bossa nova, other types of Latin rhythms, straight ahead swing, medium swing, fast swing, up-tempo, whatever. I like it as more of like a sultry ballad. The reason why I like it that way is because it lends itself more to kind of that bluesy feel, that the melody sort of exudes blues. Now, even though it's not a 12-bar blues, it is in a minor key, and it does have that kind of sound to it. So listen to this. Hear that blues scale going throughout? You're going to hear a lot of that in the recording that I'm about to play. In terms of form, it's a short structure. You've got 4 bars, which is kind of like an A section, and then you've got a B section, then it repeats to the A section, and then goes to C down here. So it's kind of like A, B, A, C. In terms of the chord changes, really simple. You've got a bunch of minor 2/5s. So for example, this is 2/5 of A minor, this is 2/5 of D minor, this is 2/5 of B flat, and so on and so forth. So again, bunch of 2/5s, typical of jazz standards. Definitely want to get that blues feel in there. In terms of keys, I would say C major, like this one. This is kind of like the standard key. Also, I would learn it in B flat as well. So the first chord in B flat would be G minor. So those 2 keys and you pretty much have it covered. Let's take a listen to my recording of Summertime and you'll hear that bluesy sound that I'm talking about. Did you hear the blues sounds? There's a lot of grace notes and blues licks in there. It kind of gives it that really sultry feel, which is important. Okay, that ends our 5 tunes. What I'm going to do now is put a link to all 5 of these pieces of sheet music. They are lead sheets with the melody and the chord symbol. It's important as beginner jazz pianists to start playing from lead sheets. That's the basis of the whole jazz industry. If you want to play a lot of tunes, you should be able to read tunes, lead sheets from the real book. So let me put a link to that up here in the corner. All you got to do is put an email address and you can download it. If you're already a member over at jazzmentl.com, if you click the link, it should just download automatically. Now, if you're looking to expand your musical horizons a little bit more, especially with this tune Summertime, recently I did a video where I backed up a vocalist on the tune Summertime. I did it in a different key. I don't exactly remember what key it was in, but you can check that video out. There's a lot to hear in terms of how a piano player would approach performing with a vocalist. Let me put a link to that tutorial and you can find it right here.